your host, Stanya Garias. We're here at the Telluride Medical Center today, talking with a couple folks about the exciting developments of the Telluride Medical Center, where it's headed in the future to the town of Mountain Village. We've got Mayor Dan Jansen with us today, Larry Mallard, who is the chairman of the board for the Telluride Hospital District, and also Gordon Reichert, who is the executive director of the Telluride Medical Center. All right, Gordon, a bit of history. How long has the Telluride Medical Center been in the town of Telluride?
The Telluride Medical Center has been here since 1978, when the local Rotary Club was able to procure this building, which was at the time a house. And of course it has been here since and has expanded multiple times since 1978.
What kind of facility, what kind of services does it currently offer to residents and visitors of the area?
We currently have two operations. One is primary care. The other one is emergency department, emergency services. The emergency service is a level 5 trauma unit recognized by the state. Primary care has 5 providers and provides 6 days a week care.
And Larry, obviously the town of Mountain Village and the region itself as well has grown a lot in the last several years since the 1960s. So it would seem that an expansion of the facility would be in order. It seems quite logical. What can you tell us about that, as far as maybe from a population standpoint, how that's affected the need to upgrade the facility, expand the facility? What can you tell us about that?
Well, there's a couple of things that go into play on the growth, one of which is the expansion of the entire district. It's not necessarily, we haven't seen as stronger growth in the town itself because it's more built out than the other areas. But Mountain Village, Down Valley, and the Mesas, we've seen a pretty significant growth just in organic population.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to add to that. I mean, people forget Mountain Village didn't exist when this building was created, and now we obviously have 1,300 residents. And maybe it's where you were going, Larry, is prospectively, when you look, the state demographer has projected San Miguel County currently in 2010 at 7,600 people, about 15,000 people by 2040, which is well within the planning horizon of obviously a new medical center. Almost all of that growth occurs outside of the town of Telluride, which is largely built out. A big chunk of it in Mountain Village, but some of the other places down valley and nearby. So we're planning for not only what we are now, but what we're going to be, and so we don't have to be going through this process again. And not that it isn't fun, mind you, but in 10, 20, 50 years down the road. So I'm sorry, Larry.
That's all right. And in addition to that, we've seen a growth in the young population of children. We've got our school system, as you know, we just went through a bond scenario because we're expanding so big there, we're running out of space there. That younger child requires just a little bit more care in a medical facility than, say, does a 20 or 30-year-old adult who may or may not want to come on a regular basis. Compound that with the closing of the only other option we had in the town of Telluride, which was Dr. Homer's primary care office. He has since closed and relocated to another location. So we've seen our numbers just in a 24-month period grow by about 18%. And in a building that was already stretched to capacity, I mean, the fact that we're having to do this interview in an ER room because we have no other place we could do it is an example, but it's just created some very significant restraints from space that, as a group, we need to plan for the future because it's not going to slow down.
Did the district, the hospital district, and the medical center board consider trying to do some expansion just to this facility? Is that even an option?
We've spent about $3.2 million over the year expanding this facility.
Okay.
And we are about at max capacity. There's not much else we can do. And the fact that we don't own the building, and we do have a lease that ends, 17 years, I believe, Gordon, is that correct, when this lease ends? Investing another $2 or $3 million into a building that we know we're not going to own and probably we would have to do again in 5 years, it's probably not the most fiduciary thing. So what we're looking to do is find a facility that will handle our current needs, but then again a site that would also allow us to expand, so we're not having this same discussion 30 years from now. The only meetings we're having are how are we going to expand on our space instead of looking for another piece of land.
And Gordon, Larry raises an interesting point in regards to the terms of the lease. So again, you say it goes on for about another 17 years. There are folks that I've heard in the public who would argue, why now? Why not just wait? Because again, the terms are fairly reasonable at this facility right now. Not only the 17 years, but again, tell me about the terms and tell me about the annual rate that currently is being leased for.
The terms are very favorable, and that's one of the reasons why we have been able to put away some money to be able to build a new facility with. We pay in the neighborhood of $13 a year, and that lease is paid up through the term of the lease, and so we don't have any obligation to the lease. It's just as Larry has pointed out, we are at our four walls here, and we're currently doing a slight remodel in our conference room to allow us to use our conference room as an exam room. It's just we have nowhere to go. We're at the boundaries of the property. Yes, we could tear it down. We could certainly build a two-story structure if permitted by the town on this property. But the question is where do we operate while we are scraped to the ground here? You know, you basically have to build a replacement facility to build a replacement facility. And it makes no financial sense whatsoever.
I think that's a really good point. So now stepping ahead to finding a new site and looking at, figuring out what to do. Larry, what can you tell us about the sites that put their hat in the ring? This has been something that racked up fairly recently, and I know it started with several sites. What can you tell us about getting that process started?
Well, as a group, as a board, and probably I don't want to speak for the two guys in this room, if there were an option to keep this at the current location, to expand it, we would all want to keep it because those terms of that lease are so very favorable to us. Keep in mind, the lease is actually with the town of Telluride, and they have the lease with Idorado, and then we annually renew with the town of Telluride. So the lease is actually with them, and it's tied to providing 24-hour ER care. That's what that lease is tied to. Primary care is a benefit of that, but the mill levy and the lease with the town primarily is to provide 24-hour emergency care. So once we determined that we are at max capacity here and we can't go forward, we did examine very closely the thought of scraping this, putting some temporary facilities, but the cost of doing that are in the millions of dollars. And then secondly, the town of Telluride historically has not been hugely in favor of very large structures in the historic district of Telluride. And I understand that. I'm a neighbor. I live 50 yards from here. I don't know that we would have support of the town to try to build a 25,000 square foot facility on this spot. This is the historic depot district. It's a residential district. And I worry that even if we tried that, we would have some pretty significant obstacles to overcome for approval. So once we ruled that out, we need to find a piece of land. And 18 months ago, there was probably nobody on our board that thought it was going to be any place other than the RV lot or the Pearl property here. It had been voted on a couple of times. The people in the community said, hey, we would like it there. And in 2008, we got very close. We just didn't get the funding mechanism. It voted in, you can have the piece of land for purchase, but we're not going to get any money to do it. So it was a weird thing how that turned out. We were still hopeful that the community wanted it there. As we got further along in this process, there were others, Mountain Village, and then two parcels in Lawson Hill that expressed some interest. Hey, if you can't get something worked out with the town parcel, we would like to be considered. Which was great for us because obviously options are always a good deal for everyone. And then affordable housing became a pretty big topic in the town of Telluride, deservedly so. It's a challenge in this town. The rec center became a discussion in the town of Telluride. So the discussion started coming around, is the Pearl property really where we want the medical facility? And so it was put on the ballot, as you know, and just wrapped up in November. And by a 2-to-1 margin, folks in the town of Telluride said we want something other than the medical center on that piece of property. And when we get that, again, I live in town, I own a business in town, and having affordable housing is key. So I totally understand Telluride's position on that. So then that puts us to Mountain Village or the Lawson Hill. And we began discussing those. And both of those had very good pros. There's cons to both of them as well. But ultimately, having the Mountain Village as a long-term partner for our district is appealing to me. I have a feeling that when we leave this, as I leave the board 5-6 years from now, it's in good hands with whoever's there because they have a good partner in Mountain Village. The expansion ability at that parcel allows us to go up to 50,000 square feet. We certainly do not need that, and I hope we never need it. But if we build 20,000 square feet now and we need 10,000 square feet in the future, I'm glad to know we've got a partner and a parcel that will allow that. And then third and final, it's still on the pedestrian bounded line. So it's on the opposite end, but still 70% of the people that use our facility can still get to it now without starting a car. Lawson was very appealing from a regional standpoint. It was appealing from an EMS standpoint. People that were driving from Mesas and down Valley, much more convenient for them. But for those that don't own a car or live in one of the communities, everybody that would have went to the Society Turn spot would have had to turn a car on to do it, one way or the other. So ultimately, I think those three things, a good partner, expansion ability, and it remains on the pedestrian line, were some of the major decisions that that are major factors that went into playing our decision.
Dan, tell us about the lot that has now been chosen. What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, sure. We were kind of, we had 2 lots initially in Mountain Village that we put forward in partnership with our friends at GMUA. And for reasons I can bore you with offline or late now if you want, we decided they probably weren't the best ones. And then we were delighted to find, kind of a diamond in the rough between Town Hall and the parking structure. There's a pretty sizable lot. The reason we hardly even knew it was there because you just don't see it. It's tucked in behind Town Hall, but it's large enough to allow the type of facility that Larry and Gordon are talking about. The expansion potential, it's 50 feet from the gondola, so if you're on crutches, it's pretty easy. It has existing parking structure already built, covered. It's on the other side is our current EMS facility. There's a supermarket there, ski in, ski out, bike in, bike out, hike in, hike out. And when we talk about the ER, those skiers and those bikers, it's really neat that they're going to be able to ride if they're still capable or ski or get pulled, right into this facility. So we think it's a great site. We're a little bit biased, obviously.
Right.
And when you get off the gondola at Town Hall, just turn right, walk towards the parking structure, look to your left, and you'll see it tucked right in there.
So who owned the lot? Who owns
It's a
it?
town-owned lot.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
very nice. So what will the arrangement be? We talked about the terms for this location. What would the arrangement be then for having the site now in the town of Mountain Village?
Yeah, it's pretty simple, to be honest. The town, because I can talk a little bit about why we thought this was so important, but to answer your question, it's pretty simple. We are just going to convey that piece of land to the hospital district at de minimis cost, which is a fancy Latin word for free. And as long as they build a medical center in a reasonable time frame, the town will then kind of revert to its usual land use authority role. There'll be plenty of open and public meetings in terms of the design of the facility, the approvals of the facility, but it's simply a very simple land conveyance.
And you talked about public input when it comes to the design. How about public input as far as up through this process of selection? Did the public have a say, or was this decided amongst your boards?
So we went very far in trying to include the public in this, and I know myself, I've made 11 public appearances, so just on this single topic. We had up to 300 people at Sheridan Opera House answering questions. Our board meetings are open to the public, and we've sent out press releases each time inviting folks to come in. And again, as the process first started, we had a lot more commentary. I think people felt a little more comfortable with our process as we went through it, and I think really believe that we are trying to make the best decision for the district for the next 40 or 50 years. If we're talking about the next 2 or 3 years, the decision's different. We probably don't go to Mountain Village if we're just looking at a 24-month horizon. But we can't do that. It's a lot of money we're talking about. It's future districts. It's my kids. If my kids would like to stay here, I'm comfortable that we've made the right decision for the spot. And ultimately, what we were after is discussion on site selection. But the most important thing for us is the facility. Okay, the secondary issue is the site, because any of the 3 sites that we picked is only 15 minutes for anybody, regardless of which one we picked. So we all get spoiled. Again, I live 50 yards from the medical center. I'm now going to have to get on the gondola and go. So yeah, it's a little more inconvenience, but it's a beautiful gondola ride. It's 13 minutes, and I'll be at the facility. So ultimately, having to drive 15 minutes, we were comfortable with. Regardless of where we picked it, the other 2 spots were not going to be totally embracing it, but we felt pretty good about it. We did solicit a lot of input from the public. We're at the point now where it goes to the design process, architectural process, and at that point, we'll hire consultants and architects and medical architects and all of that stuff to do. So the first step is to get the land conveyed, of which we've not done yet, but we're close. We're pretty close on an agreement. And Mountain Village is, again, their goal is to hand us a piece of land and say, go build the medical center, and if you don't build it within 5 years, you got to give it back, one of those kind of things. So I think it's simple as that. And then the hard work starts. The devil's in the details with the designing and fundraising, which will be a very key component.
If I could just comment, I mean, personally, I have been involved in 7 public meetings discussing this, either participating, leading in a town council, or participating in other meetings. So we've had, and it was kind of a counterintuitive decision, right? And so I would just compliment the hospital district board and Larry and Gordon's leadership. It was a fast, fair, and efficient process, and it led to, I think, objectively a better answer for the community over the long term.
And matter of fact, to add to that, some people have said, you're just moving way too fast. It's just, you've got all this time left on your lease, and so what's all the hurry about? Again, back to Larry's point, today we're filming this in the ER room. Well, the fact of it is we are so out of space. We've got people on top of each other. We've had to turn patients away because we can't get them in. We just don't have the space. And so there's a sense of urgency here that we definitely need to move as quickly as we possibly can and do it smartly, of course.
Yeah. It sounds like every effort was made to include the public in the decision. I know that even just recently, God bless technology, because there's all kinds of wonderful public forums online. And in fact, there's one in particular through Facebook that gets a lot of attention. A lot of residents and business owners and whatnot participate in on Facebook from Telluride and the region, and Mountain Village too. Someone was just mentioning today, this morning actually, while I was getting ready for my interview, about the fact that, you know, where are the studies? Seems like people are now shifting gears, not how did we get here necessarily when it comes to, you know, wanting to be involved, the decision's been made, but people wanting to educate themselves on what made one site outweigh another. Are the studies going to be published, or are they already, that the public can take a look and see what led to the decision?
I invite anyone to go to tellmed.org.
Okay.
That's our website. Go to the strategic plan, and you'll see all these exhibits listed with the strategic plan. And there's at least 4 studies there done by a variety of different consultants and different agencies looking at what our need is for the future. They are more than welcome to go there and look at that data. If they have questions about any of it, they're more than welcome to email me as well.
And that's not unique to what we do. Telluride in particular is a fairly apathetic town early and then an overly involved near the end. And I'm proud to say I live here. I've lived here for 18 years and I love that about our community. I love the passionate people, but historically they're not involved early. When a decision's made where it impacts them in a way they view negatively, that's when all of a sudden, how come I haven't been invited? How come I, you know? And it's natural, and I get it, and I appreciate everyone's passion. I just would tell everyone that we've got 5 elected people to this board. This is a position that we volunteered to do because we have an investment in our community, and me in particular for my daughters. So every decision I make is for the best of the district. And what we need to remember is even though it's called the Telluride Medical Center, the Telluride dollars that are thrown in here only are 20% of our dollars. 80% comes from the district, which are the Mesas, Down Valleys, Mountain Village. So we've got to take all of those into account. And Telluride has historically, again, not been in big favor of big projects. And I get it, and I appreciate that and kind of support that to some extent. The best thing for them is they've got a willing partner in Mountain Village, who as a partner is willing to take on those kind of things because it matches more what their demographic is up there, are a little bigger, more modern, that kind of stuff. So they should be very, so they should be
I don't like the bigger
so
part, but I'll
progressive.
take the bottom.
Yeah. But they've got a willing partner that is accepting of this, and I think people are coming around to that. The comments have really slowed down, I think, and again, I'm not naive enough to know it's not going to get revisited. It certainly will, and it will get revisited loudly, as most things do. But I'm confident in the process. I'm confident in the transparency that we did, and feel that everything that we've done is we've tried to do in the best interest of the district in which we all live.
Can I pile in on that a little
Please.
bit? Because a lot of folks have asked me about this, and I've been accosted by a few. I've kind of responded in a slightly adversarial way and said the site selection is a critical step in the process. I don't think it's the most important issue. Because to be honest, I think several of those sites could have worked. We need to start focusing on the much more important questions, and we can all develop personal preferences as to which site we like. But at least three more important questions: which site and what is going to be the best facility to serve the long-term needs of our region? It needs to be flexible, it needs to be expandable, it needs to have technology packed into it. I've said before, my 3 kids are competitive moguls here, so they've afforded me the opportunity to visit a lot of hospitals in the western U.S. And when you go into those at Mount Hood and Vail and Park City, name it, ours does not look like the best. And I don't mean any disrespect to the doctors and staff, Gordon and his team. I'm simply talking about this residential building. We deserve the best facility. Secondly, we're spending the people's money, so we need to do it in a fiscally responsible manner. And finally, it was something that each of these gentlemen talked about. We want to do it fast. I think Gordon and his staff deserve a better tool than we're giving them right now to serve our community. They're doing a hell of a job. They deserve better, and frankly, we're a world-class destination. We deserve a state-of-the-art facility. And I don't mean to get all precious. We don't deserve it in
That's pretty precious.
in 20 years or 30 years. We deserve it now. And so my view is best facility, fiscally responsible and fast. That's where I hope the discussion kind of goes to, and get away from the piece of dirt, because that's where I want to spend a lot of my thinking, is making sure those things happen.
Exactly. I really like, from a personal perspective, the location. To your point about having kids that are up on the mountain, I've got a couple myself, 4 actually, and we have visited this facility a few times. That ride coming down in the van, you know, again, doing what you have to do, but nonetheless, it's. I'm excited to actually have something there. Again, one last comment on the site selection, then I want to talk and move into what we can look forward to.
You're like all these Telluride. You can't get off the set.
I just really feel like this is the stuff that people want to hear. So in regards to that though, in regards to the proximity to the mountain, I want to assume, but Gordon, back me up if I'm right or wrong, please correct me, that a good majority of the visitation that we see at this facility comes from accidents on our hill. Summer mountain biking, winter skiing or snowboarding. Again, tell me if I'm wrong, but is it going to be such an improvement to be able to actually have the facility slope side like this, and at least on the transit line?
To a small degree.
Okay.
We know that we'll still wind up using a white van or a type of white van, because what we understand is off the double cabins, we'll be able to get those into the med center. But if it goes into the beach or some of the other areas, those are going to have to be transported to the medical center. So it's not 100% because we're in Mountain Village that everything comes right off the mountain right into the medical center. That being said, you also have to remember that during the summertime we do have a fair number of people in town for festivals, which happens in the town of Telluride. And so to the degree that now because of our location, we bring a lot of folks down to the medical center from Mountain Village. Once we are up there, we're going to wind up bringing a few folks up from the town of Telluride.
I see.
The one thing I'd add to that, and Gordon knows the data better than I, but we have to remember we're getting prospective too. So what's coming down the road, as some folks probably know, the ski company has a real strong emphasis on their summer programs, adding more mountain biking trails, adding zip lines. Construction's coming back. A lot of these ER visits, as I understand, are these poor construction guys with a nail through their hand or something. And so again, thinking over a 50-year horizon, as we get built out, as we get more summer activities, we think we're going to contribute a fair amount of patients and customers for Gordon and his team.
Larry, like I said, let's progress forward now and look to the future and talk about the facility. Are we starting with a 20,000 square foot building and then going, as time progresses, being able to go from there? And what kind of services and things that we can't get at this location because it's maxed out are we going to be able to see right out of the gate up in Mountain Village?
So 20,000 feet in that area-ish has always been our placeholder.
Okay.
And would we love to hire an architect, a medical architect that is so efficient with space, they're so good, it's a team? Yes, that's less building cost for us, less expense for our community. But let's use 20,000 as a number to go, as a placeholder. It could be a couple thousand more, hopefully it's a couple of thousand less. Obviously with our current setup, that's obviously something that would go up there as well. But in addition to that, we're going to be doing a procedure room that would allow for some outpatient procedures that would happen. Additional space that's more easily accessible for our visiting specialists. A room for a detox facility, which we sorely need in our county right now, according to Sheriff Masters. Hopefully attracting county nursing to join us, hopefully attracting behavioral health up there, and then again positioning hospice program, and then positioning ourselves moreover. We don't really need to have a full-time orthopedist or pediatrician or OBGYN right now. I hope that our community grows in the way where we do need that, and that's what we'll have the space to expand until. We've tried to get some folks to come in that have these specialties and say, would you be interested? And frankly, we just don't have enough volume or business for them. It takes somewhere around 1,200 surgeries a year for a single OR to be able to even pay for itself. And last year, Telluride referred out 400 in total. So we're well short of where we need to be to attract those. We want to build it now to take care of everything we've got and try to get some more efficiencies and economies of scale. If that's a pharmacy, if we could get a pharmacy to come up there with a satellite office, I know Mountain Village would love that. But it's positioning ourselves for when this growth does happen, that we're ready to just literally flip a switch, build the room, and then we've got our orthopedist. And then build the room, and we have our OBGYN. So it's more positioning ourselves for the future and being able to handle what we've got right now. Because literally we're out of space right now for what we have. We're double stacking rooms, and it can be a challenge. So those are the additional items we would be building in the facility right now. But more important to us is positioning for the growth that we expect will come.
The one area you didn't mention was the critical access hospital.
Yes.
Maybe that was purposeful. So what we are looking at is evaluating whether or not we need overnight capacity. It's something that's real important to us because we do have patients that don't need to go to a tertiary facility but could stay here. So we don't know if we're going to do that, but certainly we're looking at it. We think and we believe that we will probably build to a critical access standard such that if we wanted to seek that designation, we could do that. But that's one other thing.
And we have some negative impacts if we don't do that. From a financial standpoint, if we're not considered a critical access hospital, which in the medical world is referred to as a CAW, if we are not counted as a CAW, there are certain reimbursements that we don't get in our emergency room. They refuse to pay emergency room rates because we're officially not a hospital. Nor are we affiliated with one within, has to be 60 miles or 65 miles or something like that. So if we build an overnight bed where you come in and really all you need is oxygen and a lower altitude for a couple hours, we could put you in there instead of sending you to Montrose. The upside of that is that we potentially will qualify as a CAW and increase those reimbursement rates to solidify us financially. But the healthcare is such a rapidly evolving thing right now, and I had no idea until I joined this board just how convoluted is a strong word, but convoluted this thing is. And the hoops these guys have to jump through just to get paid from insurance companies and from the government is a challenge. And what Gordon's talking about, I do think ultimately we're going to build an overnight bed room. And if we can utilize that, great. If we find out CAW goes out the window and that we don't need to have it again, then great. We've got another exam room already ready. So,
what I was going to add to Larry and Gordon's list is also another expanded service that they're hoping to offer is a helipad, and I think it differentiated some of the locations. And so Mountain Village has the opportunity to add a pretty low-cost helipad because it can be put on the top of our parking structure. And we've had a couple different hospital architects come in, a couple different helicopter pilots, even a very recognized consultant. And while at the end of the day, the FAA has to approve it, they all think that it's very possible to put one in. A few of our residents have asked questions like, gosh, helicopters. What I have to remind them of is most are very supportive because if I'm having my heart attack, I'd love to have a helipad. But just one or two folks say, gosh, is that going to kind of create some inconvenience? And what we said to them is, one, remember Helitrax has over 100 takeoff and landings every winter in Mountain Village, and you hardly even notice it. This is something like, you told me 5 to 10, only when absolutely essential, when the person has to be evacuated, when fixed wing isn't an option, or driving. And what I encourage people to say is, in a perfect world, maybe we won't want a helicopter near our house 5 to 10 times a year, but try to have a little empathy, because that person in that helicopter is probably having the worst day of their year, maybe their life, and bear a tiny bit of inconvenience, and I think it'd still be a really nice option for our doctors to be able to put somebody out quickly.
I remember coming to one of the public meetings actually, and Gordon was mentioning that. I think you had said something about on average 8 helicopter transports a year, and that did really resonate with me. I live in Lawson Hill, and that was one of the sites obviously being considered, and there was a little bit of concern about noise and whatnot, but absolutely I agree to your point that empathy is very important because that person's obviously really needing it. That's not that much to ask.
We even had a helicopter come in and practice the approaches, measure the sound. Some poor guy had to climb the chairlift towers to make sure there weren't any vibrations. And from what I understand, the data came in very, very positive, very supportive, and the decibel level is kind of like a loud lawnmower. So, so far so good. A lot more work to be done though.
Larry, it sounds like every effort has been made to keep this new facility, as inexpensive as possible. From the helipad being able to go on top of the parking structure, the square footage being evaluated. It sounds like you guys are making as much effort as you can to keep that cost down. However, of course, I think a lot of the public is wondering where are these funds coming from to build this facility. We know that the land is being deeded, which is fantastic. Let's talk about that. Where are the funds going to come from to make this happen?
Well, obviously that's a major piece. We've got to be able to pay for it. The first step was to find a piece of land The second step was to get the land conveyed to us. We've actually got it in our hands, and we're very close to that. Our next step will then be the fundraising piece and the design piece. The fundraising piece needs the proper leadership team in place that have the experience with development and fundraising and doing that. So I would expect what our group will do is put together another board or another committee or reformulate one of our existing ones with folks that have investment in this community, that have skill sets in those areas, that are the right folks to help raise money, are the right folks to help us in the design process, know the questions to ask. Because again, all of us on the board, while we volunteered and were elected for this position, none of us have skill sets that relate to development. So we need to surround ourselves with people to do that. So I would expect our next step is going to be putting together a group of people that will be the face of this project. It won't be the Telluride Hospital District Board. I expect it will be some folks that we enlisted that want to help with this process, and I think that's the next step. Obviously, if we could raise 100% of this philanthropically, that would be great. I don't know that that's realistic. As Mayor Jansen mentioned, we just passed a $24 million school bond. Telluride Science Research Center is going to be out looking for approximately $20 million within the next couple of years. And that's the initial price tag-ish of what we're looking at, and it would be $20 million. So I don't believe that there's a philanthropic capacity in our community or willingness to pull off $60 to $100 million in a short time frame. So ultimately, I hope what we look at is a half philanthropic, half publicly funded venture, where we could go to the voters, is it next year, is it the year after, and we say, guys, we have a piece of land, we've raised $5 million already, we're going to raise another 5, we need you to throw in the other 10. And I think that's a good story. We're invested in it, we've done the work, and we're ready to have you guys invest in this. The timing of that, I don't know yet. We're going to do a feasibility study on how much we think we can raise, and that's a very key component of this. But we've gotten good signals from people like the Telluride Foundation, who have said the medical center is a very important thing to them. So if we can get a group like that involved in our fundraising piece, it will help. But I'm not optimistic that we would raise 100% of the philanthropically. I do expect that we'll have to go to the public for some help. But at what level that is, we're not there yet. And that help will be twofold. Not only are we going to have to be raising some funds for a new facility, but obviously our operating expenses are going to be a little higher because we're paying $13 right now. And for a 9,000 square foot facility, and it goes without saying that when you get a bigger facility, your operating costs. So I would say at some point, a mill levy and a bond discussion are going to be had, but those will be had with the community. What do you want in this? And once we identify that, let's figure out how to pay for it. But I think it'll be a joint venture between the entire district. It's not just Telluride, Mountain Village, or it's our entire district. Remember, we're a district that kind of mirrors the Telluride School District.
Dan, how have your residents and voters been feeling about this decision? Have you received positive feedback?
Overwhelmingly positive. And like I said, Mountain Village, we have some residents, some second homeowners who are a little older in some cases, and they're delighted. I've been told by the school district more 0 to 5-year-olds than the town of Telluride has, for example. So the folks like you with young kids are pretty excited. But this is a regional asset, and I think we all really need to get behind it.
Gordon, let's talk a little bit on a last point about the design process, and what do you think as far as timing for that? Is that something, again, we talked about the public being able to be involved, or do you see that happening over the course of the next 6 months to a year? What do you think in regards to that?
Again, because we feel so much of an urgency, we've already released an RFP, RFQ for an architect engineering firm. We expect to get those back early January. We will conduct interviews. We think by mid to late February, they'll actually start commencing with their work to design a new facility. Then it's a matter of working with the town of Mountain Village to go to the DRB, go to their citizens group, work with the conditional use permits for the heliport, all those sorts of things. I think we will have a product that our fundraising team can use by April, if not late or early May of this next year.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
So the public can feel confident that maybe they're going to be able to be involved in some of those meetings, come and hear some things or see some things by summer, perhaps.
Yeah, we even belts and suspenders just to ensure full public participation. Our DRB process, our town council process, all open, all public, all noticed. but we added on top of that a citizens advisory panel that will provide their perspective on any development in the town hall sub-area, and this being the first one. Those are some affordable housing that may beat them to the line here. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities, and we're going to populate that with some of the folks who have the concerns, so they can make sure that they're really heard and those concerns are respected.
Well, I think today's conversation has been very helpful and educational to put a lot of minds at ease, answer a lot of questions for the public. I wish you luck. I know it's been a long journey already, but there's still obviously a lot to do in the future, and we'll look forward to watching the progress of the Med Center. But thank you so much for being here today with me, and we'll see what happens in the future. It's exciting stuff.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. I'm Stanya Garias. Thanks so much for being here today, and we'll see you next time on Uptown.